The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
There was once a person by the name of, let's call him Sam. And Sam had a very close friend, and his name was Max. And they were very, very close with each other. They went to nursery together, and they lived in the same block. And they went to elementary school together, and they went to high school together. There's a true story happened in Israel. And they were best friends. Chavutas, everything was going excellent. When they got of age, Sam got married first, and then 3 months later, Max got married. Within 1 year after Sam got married, he had a baby boy, and then shortly afterwards, his friend Max also had, a baby boy, shortly afterwards. And this, as good friends that they were growing up, eventually, both couples were, but the husband and wife both became very close with the other husband and wife. So they, as their kid grew up. As Sam's kid grew up, he became 5 years old, and they decided they're going to send him to it was actually when he was 4. When he's 4, they decided to send him to this amazing preschool, right? It was an unbelievable, school, hard to get in, and they managed to get it in, so they decided they're going to send him there. The only downside was, it was a little bit far. Since it was a little bit far, so they decided, they have to drive him, he can't walk. So they drove him for 1 year, they drove him to the school. When he became 5, his friend's son, Max's son, also came of age, and they also wanted to put him in the same school. And they happened to get in, and they decided, listen, we're both going there. They both live far. They've lived very close to each other. They says, let's carpool, right? Like nowadays, everyone does it. They decided, let's carpool. And they decided that they're going to go and they're going to switch off days, which one is going to take both kids. So everything was working beautifully until, what the mother who says the story, is a true story, who mother says the story, calls it Black Monday. It says one day Sam was always particular. When he brought the kids to school, he would always lock one side, which was towards the oncoming traffic. He would always lock it to make sure that no one could go out and none of the kids could get into oncoming traffic. And they all have to go to the side that was closer to the curb. However, Max wasn't so particular about it. So one day he's driving both their kids, his kid and his friend's kid, and he's driving to school, and he just parks, and he says, all right, everyone out. And, the Sam's kid, his name was Shlomi, he said, he just opened the door right next to him. And it just so happened to be, it was in the street. And it says, what happened was his car was speeding by. The second he stepped out, the car hit him. He flew, tens of feet in the air. And the mother says the story that he died on the spot. He didn't make it. And, so the mother says the story, there was a funeral, and there was there was a shiva, but she says that they were all, it was all from they were in an outside perspective. It's unfortunately no one should ever know from this, but they couldn't feel like they were in it. They felt like they were observing it from the outside. And it said they took it very, very hard. They didn't take it, there's no way to take it easy, but they took it terribly. And, as his friend, Max came and wanted to pay Shiva call to Sam, and he's like, how do you show your face that because of you his son died? It's terrible. And finally, after a few days, he said he has to go. He went and he paid a Shiva call to his best friend, who he unfortunately caused his kid to die. And the wife said the story. She says, we weren't sure when the friendship was over, but one thing is for sure: when he left the Shiva house, everybody knew that this friendship was done. They didn't take it well. And it was not, the parents were not very receptive and understanding, and an accent, they didn't take it well at all. And this guy Max, killed, a 5-year-old kid got killed because of him. A person can't sleep with that. A person can't live with that. So he took it very, very hard, and he kept on coming to his friend, Sam, and he kept on begging him. He's like, please, forgive me, I'm sorry. He would wake up early in the morning, go in front of his house, and say, please, I beg of you, forgive me for what I've done. And nothing doing. He would cry, send letters, do everything he could. Finally, Sam got really upset already. He's like, listen, he says, nothing's never going to change. He says, stop coming. I don't want to see you ever again. And he said, not only that, he says that every time that I'm near you, I get upset. And every time, he's like, more than that, I can't stay in this neighborhood that much longer. And the wife said the husband was true to his word. 1 month later, they got up and they moved out of the community. And they decided they're going to start new. They went to this new community, and about a year or so later, they were blessed with a child. In the interim, they had 2 twins, and now this is a 3rd child. So they had three kids at this point. And they obviously you can't replace a kid, but they felt like this was a gift from heaven, sort of to ease their suffering. And life goes on, and they continue with babies are going to school and they're getting older, and suddenly One day, the wife gets a frantic phone call from somebody in a hospital and says, "You have to come. Your husband's in the hospital." She comes racing down, and she's told that her husband was, he fainted. He passed out in work. They brought him into the hospital, and they realized that he has kidney failure, and he needs to go now on dialysis, which means is that every 3 times a week he has to go to a center, and his kidneys doesn't work, so he can't really urinate. So now what they do is they plug someone into this machine for like 4 or 5, 6 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, just to clean out for what all the toxins that usually the kidneys usually do. And she looks at her husband, and he became from used to be like a strong man, he became nothing. He went all the way down. He had to quit his job. He had to go on disability, and he had to he was on dialysis for quite some time. After a few months of him being on dialysis, they get a call from the surgeon who's in the hospital, and the nephrologist or whatever was in charge, and he tells them, he said, "Listen, I need you both to come in here immediately." They both come in, and he says, "Listen, I was reviewing your husband's paperwork, and it doesn't look good. He's by end-stage renal failure, which means is that he has about 3 months until it becomes terminal, and all systems are shutting down." And they're like, "So what are we supposed to do?" He says, "The only thing you can do right now is really a transplant, and the problem is that he has a very rare blood type, and you need a very specific person with exactly the same blood type to give him the transplant, and that's very hard to come by." So they're like, they're saying "So what are you telling us? That it's over?" And he's like, "No, listen, we'll put you on the waiting list, and God willing, pray, do whatever you can, then hopefully we'll be able to get something." So they get home. They're completely, the husband's getting weaker and weaker. The wife is beside herself. She lost her child not too long ago. Now she feels like she's going to lose her husband as well. And she goes and she says, the first thing she does is she opens up the Tehillim, Psalms, and she starts reading the entire thing, crying to God, nonstop. And finally she finishes the book once, and she decides she's going to go to the rabbi of the community. And he goes and she basically spills the whole story. She tells him everything from the beginning, about her son that passed away, and now her husband is sick, and it's not looking good. And can you please do something? So the rabbi says, "I want you to keep on praying." And says, "Don't worry, I'm going to go speak to all the biggest rabbis. I'm going to shake the heavens for you." And she felt confident. She felt good. She went home, and she said that day she finished the Tehillim 3 times. Soaked with tears, 3 times the Tehillim she finished. And she said that was her daily routine. Her daily routine was that she would go and she would recite Tehillim. And, after about 2 months after that, she gets a call from the hospital. And the hospital saying that they found a donor, please come in immediately. So they both rush in, and they're doing some testing. It says, we have a donor, we think it is a close match. So they start doing all the testing, and they find out that it's exactly the same match, and it's all systems go. So they're very excited, Baruch Hashem, and he goes on the surgery. And Baruch Hashem, the surgery was successful. He bounced back. He was able to, his kidneys, his one kidney was working, and things were getting back into normal. And about 6 months passed since the surgery. He starts working again. He starts getting into normal life. And one day he shows up by his wife's work. He calls her from downstairs and he says, "Please come down, I need to speak to you." And she was very nervous. She says her husband never showed up to her work once. And to come in and to say, "I need to speak to you," there must be something going on over here. And it can't be good. So she goes down over there and she sees that he's white. He's like white as a horse. She's like, "Is everything okay? Is it your kidneys? Is what's going on?" And he's like, No, Baruch Hashem, everything's okay. I just, something happened, I need to tell you. So they sit in the car and he starts telling her, he said, "Listen, he says, when I was sick with the kidney failure, I started thinking about, doing cheshbon nefesh, which means retrospection, see how I lived my life. And he says, it really bothered me how I treated my friend Max. I don't feel like I was right. And, I know he didn't do it, obviously he didn't do it on purpose. So it started bothering me, but every time I would think about him while I was sick, he said, it made me really bitter and really annoyed and really, anxious, so I decided to just push it off. And he says, today I started thinking about it, more. And I said, let me call a mutual friend of ours to see how he's doing. So he calls over his mutual friend, and he's like, and he says, while I'm speaking to him, I could see that he never knew that he had any issues with his kidneys. He never, they never put the two and two together. So he says, "Oh, how's Max doing?" And so his friend, the mutual friend, he said, listen, Max is, he's doing better. He's recuperating after the surgery, but he's getting better. So the guy stops, like, what surgery? He's like, oh, right, I forgot you're not in contact with him anymore. So he said, Max, I guess he felt really bad about what happened. So sort of as something, to pay back God, he felt like he donated his kidney to somebody. And this guy, the phone just dropped. And he picks up the phone. He's like, oh, okay, I gotta go. I'll call you right back. He almost fainted. The husband said, and he goes to his wife and he's like, what are we supposed to do? He's like, how is this possible? How did this happen? He says you know what? And I feel it that he gave me his kidney. He's like, I feel it that it's him. And the wife is thinking, and she's like, you know what? She starts putting, she's a smart woman. She starts putting two and two together. She says, you know what? Let's go right now to the rabbi that I spoke to. He goes, both of them show up at the rabbi in the middle of the day. The rabbi opens the door, sees both the husband and wife both look white, and he realizes something is up. And she's like, something happened over here, and we think you were involved with it. And he sits him down, and he says, yeah, let me explain to you what happened. He says, when you moved into this neighborhood, your friend Max came into to meet me, and he said, listen, he says, I really felt bad. He told me everything that happened, and he felt terrible, and he really wanted to make it up. And he says, whatever you can do to try to put the two and two together. And so he said, listen, I felt you out throughout the years that you were here, and I saw that, you weren't ready yet. So I didn't mention anything. He says, but when your wife came and said that, you need a kidney, or otherwise you're not making it in past 3 months, I realized it's now or never. Let me call him. Let's see. So I call this guy Max, and when I speak to Max and I tell him about the whole situation, he stops for a second and he says, I'm a match. And the guy's like, the rabbi says, what do you mean you're a match? It's a very rare blood type, you don't know. He's like, no, I know. He says, when we were younger, we took a CPR course together, and we had to take our blood work, and we both have the same rare blood work. And but the rabbi said, he says, listen, I don't think if he tells you that it's his best friend, that killed his son, going to now give you his kid, I don't think he's going to accept it. So the Max said, he said, listen, I don't want him to know. I don't want him to know that I gave him the kidney. He says they went through some organization, which took some time, to sort of, keep the donor anonymous, which is, it's not unlikely that people do that. So they kept everything anonymous, and the rabbi said, but now that you came to me and you figured it out, I figured, might as well tell you the whole story, and here it is. So the husband and wife, froze they sat down, they were completely beside themselves, and they're thinking, and they're like, you know what, can you set up a meeting? Can we meet them? And the rabbi says, absolutely. We'll set up a meeting. They set up a meeting to meet in a hotel lobby. And the next day, the husband and wife go to meet, their once best friends, and they see them in the hotel lobby in the distance. So the second that the husbands locked eyes, they dropped everything that they did, and they ran towards each other and embraced each other, and they started crying at each other. And, when the woman saw that, so the woman get, emotionally, clicks on, and they also started crying, and they also went and they hugged, and they had an unbelievable, reunion. And, the guy who donated the kidney said, I'm so, I can't tell you how bad I feel. It's still, to the guilt fills me to this day for what happened to your son. And, the other guy, Sam, is saying, listen, I feel bad. I should apologize the way I treated you. I know you didn't do it on purpose. I know it wasn't your fault. And they just kept on, apologizing to each other, and they sort of made up, and they became friends again. A short while later, they were talking. The two husbands were talking, and the one that donated the kidney said, you should know, Sam. He says, even if your kid wouldn't have died, I was still giving you my kidney. He says, because you're like a brother to me. And he says, and I would give it to you anyway. And this is what you see, the story of how people what happens in life and to people's life, and how people are take a grudge and they hold it in, and meanwhile their life savior could come from the death of somebody else. People don't understand. People live life and they're assuming that, what happens, and that's it. If I see that you're not good to me now, I'm never going to deal with you. And people live their life with grudges, and just, this brings such a lack of happiness, such a lack of success in life. For what? At the end of the day, you push away people that you love the most. People that care about you the most, you end up pushing away.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org